needs to change.
The way the guys are at the shop, they basically made that thing and it looks just like the back one. You could never tell the difference.
Also make money on stuff like this.
Rick Dale broke down on camera, barely holding back tears, and for the first time, fans saw a side of American restoration they had never known. For years, the show drew millions weekly, standing alongside Pawn Stars and Counting Cars as one of History Channel's top reality hits. Then, everything changed. When Season 7 premiered in January 2016, Rick and his entire crew were gone. Why fire the star and his team, and leave loyal viewers in the dark? The truth is finally coming to light, and you're about to find out why American restoration truly ended. From Pawn Stars expert to reality TV star. Before American restoration existed, there was Rick Dale, a Las Vegas metal artist and antique restoration expert who'd been fixing vintage items for nearly 30 years. His path to television stardom began as an occasional expert on Pawn Stars. Starting with Pawn Stars Season 1, Episode 8, titled Time Machines, Rick Dale appeared as the go-to restoration specialist whenever Rick Harrison and the gold and silver pawn shop crew needed vintage items refurbished. He restored basically anything old that needed to be brought back to life. His skill was undeniable, and his personality resonated with viewers. Rick Dale's backstory made him particularly compelling on television. He had spoken openly about having an impoverished childhood where his parents couldn't afford to buy him new gifts. At age 9, his father pulled a bicycle out of a dumpster, and Rick taught himself to fix it. That experience sparked a lifelong passion for restoration. By 15, he was rebuilding cars and motorcycles. Eventually, he opened Rick's Restorations, running it as a family business with his wife, Kelly, handling the business and accounting side, his brother, Ron, working as a picker, and his son, Tyler, learning the trade. The Pawn Stars production team recognized gold when they saw it. They approached Rick about getting his own spin-off show. According to Rick, he initially resisted the idea. At the time, he focused primarily on restoring vending machines and gas pumps, and he didn't think a show based on those limited skill sets would generate enough content. But the producers persisted. Rick eventually agreed, and American Restoration premiered in 2010. The timing couldn't have been better. Pawn Stars had kicked off a wave of American fascination with vintage items, and American Restoration rode that wave perfectly. The show offered something unique. It wasn't just about buying and selling like Pawn Stars or customizing cars like Counting Cars. It was about resurrection, about taking forgotten relics from America's past and breathing new life into them. The format was simple but effective. Customers would bring items to Rick's Restorations, everything from Coca-Cola machines to antique motorcycles to nostalgic childhood toys. Rick and his team would assess the project, quote a price and timeline, and then viewers would watch the transformation process. Along the way, we'd see the challenges, problem-solving, craftsmanship, and family dynamics that made the shop feel relatable. The show became an instant hit, but success brought pressures that would eventually contribute to its downfall. What warning signs appeared that the show was heading for trouble? The cracks begin to show. As American Restoration grew in popularity during its first few seasons, tensions began to develop between Rick Dale and the show's producers. According to forum discussions from fans and alleged inside sources, the core issue involved creative control and how the show operated. The problem was fundamental. Rick Dale ran an actual restoration business that needed to serve real customers and make real money. But television production has its own requirements that don't always align with running a profitable shop. One source claiming inside knowledge explained it this way. The TV producers wouldn't let Rick continue doing restorations for his normal clientele. Instead, the producers picked which customers would appear on camera and negotiated the restoration prices. The show would then pay for the restorations, meaning Rick never actually received payment for the restoration work itself. His compensation came from being paid per episode. This essentially turned Rick from a business owner into an actor playing one. For the first few seasons, this arrangement worked. The trade-off made sense. Rick and his crew were paid more money per episode than they would make doing regular restoration work. The television exposure brought tremendous publicity to Rick's restorations, generating business and building Rick's reputation nationally. It was a mutually beneficial situation. But over time, the arrangement became increasingly frustrating for Rick. The show began to feel less like a documentation of his actual business, and more like a scripted sitcom in which he played a character based on himself. The spontaneous customer interactions and genuine restoration challenges that made the show compelling in early seasons gave way to more obviously produced scenarios designed for dramatic television. Additionally, the constant filming disrupted the shop's operations. According to Rick's stepson, Brettley Otterman, who gave a private tour to fans years after the show ended, they had about 4 years' worth of projects stored in their boneyards, waiting to be restored. The television production schedule meant they couldn't work on projects at their own pace. Everything had to be coordinated around filming schedules, camera crews, lighting, and the logistics of producing a weekly television series. Rick also reportedly grew tired of not being able to control which projects his shop took on. The producers decided which restoration jobs would appear on camera, and those decisions were based on what would make compelling television rather than what made business sense for Rick's restorations. Sometimes that meant taking on projects that were money losers just because they'd look good on TV. Other times, it meant turning down legitimate high-paying work from real customers because it didn't fit the show's narrative needs. There were also rumors about Rick's personality clashing with the production team. Some sources suggested he became difficult to work with as the show progressed, though whether that was the cause or effect of the mounting tensions is unclear. Was Rick being unreasonably demanding, or was he simply trying to maintain control over his own business while producers pushed for more manufactured drama? These creative tensions were building, but another factor threatened the show's future. Its ratings were starting to slip. What happened when the numbers no longer justified Rick's salary demands? The ratings decline and History Channel's decision. By the time American Restoration reached its 6th season, the show's ratings had declined significantly from its peak. While still respectable compared to many cable shows, the numbers were no longer justifying the production costs, particularly given Rick Dale's salary expectations. The show had averaged around 2.9 million viewers per week at its peak, with the highest-rated episode, Pick, Pawn, and Polish, pulling in 6.5 million viewers. Those were impressive numbers that made American Restoration one of History Channel's marquee programs. But by season 6, viewership had eroded considerably. The exact numbers weren't publicly released, but industry insiders suggested the show was pulling significantly fewer viewers than its early seasons. Several factors contributed to the ratings decline. The restoration reality TV genre had become saturated. There were numerous shows featuring shops fixing vintage items, customizing cars, or flipping antiques. The novelty had worn off. Additionally, critics noted that the show had become formulaic and overly scripted, losing the authentic feel that made early seasons appealing. One viewer described later seasons as a saccharine sitcom, with too much family drama and not enough actual restoration content. When contract renewal negotiations came up after season 6, History Channel found itself in a difficult position. Rick Dale and his team had proven they could deliver quality content and build a loyal audience. But the declining ratings suggested that the audience was shrinking, and Rick's salary demands reflected his status as the star rather than the show's current performance. According to multiple sources, Rick Dale refused to re-sign for Season 7 under the terms History Channel was offering. We don't know the specific numbers involved, but it's clear that Rick felt he deserved more than the network was willing to pay. He'd built the show from nothing. His family had dedicated years to production, and he believed his value justified higher compensation. History Channel made a calculated business decision. Rather than meet Rick's demands or cancel the show entirely, they would reboot it with a completely new concept. Instead of focusing on one shop and one restoration expert, Season 7 would feature 5 different restoration businesses spread across the country, each with its own specialty. The new shops included Bodie Stroud, Custom Cars, Dale Waxler, Motorcycle Restoration, Andy Bowman Jr., Steve Hale, and Bob Halliday. The logic seemed sound from History Channel's perspective. By featuring multiple shops, they could diversify the content and appeal to different restoration niches. They wouldn't be dependent on any single personality, which would give them more negotiating leverage in future contract discussions. And it would be cheaper. 5 smaller shops, each appearing, occasionally would cost less than paying Rick Dale and his team to carry an entire series. The decision was made. Rick Dale and his entire crew, Tyler, Ron, Kelly, Brettley, and all the shop workers who'd become fan favorites were fired. No farewell season or special send-off episode, just a pink slip and a revamped show that premiered in January 2016. Rick and his team were out, but how did they react? And did History Channel's gamble on the new format pay off? Rick's emotional response and the fans' revolt. When Rick Dale learned he'd been fired from American Restoration, he didn't stay quiet. In an emotional video posted online, he thanked fans for their years of support and asked them to voice their displeasure directly to History Channel. He could barely hold back tears as he spoke about the show ending, though he notably avoided explaining exactly why he and his crew had been removed. The video had an edge to it, a hint of revenge, as one source described it. Rick directed fans to the American Restoration website where they could air their grievances about the cast being fired. It was a call to action, an attempt to mobilize the show's loyal audience against the network's decision. And fans responded with fury. Social media exploded with complaints. The American Restoration website was flooded with comments expressing disappointment, confusion, and anger. Forums dedicated to the show are filled with discussions about boycotting Season 7. The message was clear. Viewers didn't want 5 random restoration shops. They wanted Rick, his family, and his team. History Channel remained silent. No press release explained the decision. No statement justified the new direction. The network simply premiered Season 7 in January 2016, hoping audiences would embrace the change. They didn't. From the first episode, it was obvious something fundamental had been lost. The new shops were staffed by skilled craftsmen doing legitimate restoration work, but they lacked the chemistry and personality that had made Rick's crew so watchable. There was no Tyler's youthful enthusiasm for learning the business, no Ron's easygoing picker adventures, no Kelly managing the shop's business side, no Brettley's evolution from airhead kid to competent worker. The new cast were strangers, and viewers had no reason to care about them. The restoration projects themselves were impressive. Classic cars, vintage motorcycles, antique machinery, all receiving expert attention. But the show felt sterile and impersonal. Jumping between 5 different shops meant none of them received enough screen time to develop meaningful storylines or character development. It was restoration work without heart, technical skill without personality. Reviews were harsh. Fans who gave Season 7 a chance reported feeling disconnected and bored. One viewer summed up the consensus. "I preferred the original version. I really didn't like any of the new people here and came close to turning it off." The ratings reflected this rejection. Season 7 performed poorly compared to previous seasons, confirming what fans had been saying. Rick Dale and his team weren't replaceable. They had been the show's heart and soul, and without them, American Restoration was just another generic reality program about fixing old stuff. History Channel had gambled that the show's format and concept were more important than its cast. They were wrong. Season 7 was canceled after just 1 year, and American Restoration ended permanently. The show that had run successfully for 6 seasons with Rick Dale collapsed within months of his departure. So History Channel learned a hard lesson about the importance of personalities in reality TV. But what happened to Rick Dale after being fired? Did his business survive without television exposure? Rick's Restorations closes its doors. The most surprising twist in the American Restoration story is what happened to Rick Dale's actual business after the show ended. Despite his years of television fame and the national reputation he'd built, Rick's Restorations closed its doors and is no longer in operation. This caught many fans off guard. The conventional wisdom suggested that Rick would thrive without television. The show had generated tremendous publicity, and Rick had built relationships with celebrities and high-profile clients. Musicians like Billy Joel, Sammy Hagar, and Jason Mraz had all been customers, having their vintage items restored by Rick's team. Surely that kind of reputation and clientele could sustain the business? But reality proved more complicated. According to sources who spoke with Rick's stepson Brett Lee during private shop tours, the business had become overwhelmingly dependent on the television show's structure. Years of producers selecting projects, coordinating schedules, and essentially subsidizing restoration work through episode payments had transformed Rick's Restorations from an independent business into a television production facility. When the show ended, Rick faced a difficult transition. He needed to return to operating as a normal restoration shop, competing for regular customers, setting his own prices without producers' interference, and managing all the business aspects that the show's production team had handled. But he'd also spent years becoming famous, which brought its own complications. The shop had become so popular that fans would pay just to be shown around the property. That sounds like a positive, but it also meant constant interruptions to actual work. Running a restoration business requires focus, concentration, and uninterrupted time to complete detailed technical work. Having a steady stream of tourists wanting tours, autographs, and selfies isn't conducive to actually getting work done. There's also the reality that Rick Dale was tired. He'd been restoring items since childhood, had run Rick's Restorations for decades, and had spent 6 intense years under the demanding schedule of television production. According to sources, Rick just got tired of all the BS, and the money didn't matter anymore. Sometimes people reach a point where they're simply done with a chapter of their life, regardless of how successful it's been. So Rick made a decision. He closed Rick's Restorations permanently and moved on to other ventures. With his flagship business closed, what did Rick Dale do next? And where is he today, nearly a decade after American Restoration ended? Where is Rick Dale today? Rick Dale didn't retire after American Restoration ended. He just shifted focus to less demanding pursuits that allowed him more control over his time and creative energy. His primary venture now is My Best Font Forward LLC, a business specializing in laser-cut art and custom embroidery based in Las Vegas. The company appears to be primarily run by his wife, Kelly, who has proven to be an astute businesswoman in her own right. The business creates custom signs, personalized gifts, and artistic pieces using laser cutting technology, a far cry from the intensive restoration work Rick did for decades, yet still allowing him to work with his hands and create tangible products. Rick has also pursued writing, authoring a book titled Classic Soda Machines that's available on Amazon. The book draws on his decades of experience restoring vintage vending machines and soda dispensers, offering both historical information and guidance for restoration. It's a way for Rick to share his knowledge and passion without the physical demands of actually performing restoration work. On social media, Rick maintains a presence, though less actively than during his television days. He used to be active on Twitter/X and YouTube, but hasn't posted on those platforms in years. He does still maintain fairly regular activity on Instagram, where he shares glimpses of his current life, his family, and occasional throwbacks to his restoration days. According to those who followed his journey, Rick seems content with his quieter life. He still consults and provides expertise on vintage items when requested, and he dabbles in metal art projects that interest him. But he's no longer running a full-scale restoration operation or dealing with television production demands. At this stage of his life, that appears to be exactly what he wants. The rest of Rick's team has also moved on to new chapters. Brettley Otterman successfully started his own mobile media blasting business in Las Vegas and is raising 3 children with his wife. His business serves restoration shops and contractors who need surface preparation and cleaning services, staying connected to the restoration industry without the pressure of television. Ron Dale, Rick's brother, who worked as the shop's picker, has retreated to a quiet life building custom bicycles. He stayed out of the public eye, focusing on his craft without the cameras. Kelly Dale has become extremely successful as a real estate agent in the Las Vegas area, proving that her business acumen extends far beyond managing Rick's restorations. Real estate has allowed her to leverage her people skills, organizational abilities, and business knowledge in a field where she can thrive independently. American restoration may have ended, but Rick and his crew didn't fade away. They found new ways to thrive. What was your favorite American restoration project? Do you think Rick Dale made the right decision, refusing to continue the show under History Channel's terms? And would you watch if American Restoration somehow returned with the original cast? Share your thoughts in the comments below.